Hi, everyone. Welcome back, or for the first time, welcome to the CLAT podcast. I'm your host, Janardhan Pashupati. If this is the first time you're listening to us, then let me just introduce myself. I got ranked 38 in the CLAT back in the day in 2013. I went to National Law School of India University, and I've had the privilege of mentoring hundreds of students through the CLAT cracking process, some of whom are here today. And today we have with us Sana Singh, AR 11 2023, Ayesha Khan, AR 17 2023, and Adithya Athreya, both the latter two from Bangalore. This is the AR 55 2023. So this in the CLAT, and they also, Sana and Ayesha also did well for themselves, really well for themselves in the ALET. So this is the second edition of the same episode. So this part two of episode 3, just like All India Bakchod, there's part 2 to this interview. So in the last, if you didn't catch the last one, this podcast series is brought to you by Target Success, and we'll learn more about that towards the end of this podcast episode. But really, this podcast episode is about Sana, Ayesha, and Aditya, all going to National Law School of India University. And if you didn't catch the first part to this, it was a very, very interesting conversation about the day of the exam for each of these people, some small mistakes that they made in the process, and what it was like for them. So go check that out on the channel. But today we're going to dive deeper into their preparation journey. So hi, everyone. How's it going?
Going great, actually. It's all good.
All
Yeah.
right, great. So we're awesome. So Aditya, why don't we start with you, because you had quite a unique journey in your preparation. You started in December last year. Where did the idea of what stream did you choose? Where did the idea of CLAT come from? And what happened? What was the mix-up that had you prepare rigorously for the IP MAT for so long? Yeah.
Right. So the thing is, when we were going into picking my subjects in 11th, I was still not sure about what I wanted to do. It was either doing CLAT or doing the JEE exams for engineering.
Right.
So my school subjects, I'd spoken to my parents and a couple of other people, and they said that since CLAT doesn't have any subject requirements, it makes sense to take a science subject so that if you do decide to do JEE in the end, you can still do it. But if you take up a humanities subject and then you want to switch, that's not possible. So I'm doing ISC science.
Oh, wow.
So I did 11th. So for my 11th grade, I did physics, chemistry, math, economics. My 12th grade, I had the option of dropping a subject. So I had dropped chemistry. So right now I'm doing physics, math, economics, English.
All right. Like my brother, he's doing the exact same thing, and he's got his both right now. He wishes he could drop chemistry. That was a very smart decision on your part. Yeah. Yeah.
I had the space to be able to do that. So I got really lucky. My school was a great support in that aspect. But more importantly, I was just happy to finally know what I wanted to do. So the actual story of why I wanted to do class so desperately is kind of a funny one. So last year in about November, I was talking to my parents and they said, if you're doing CLAT or JE, either ways, you need to join a coaching center. So let's go see some places. First, they took me to the Allen Center in Jalahalli.
Yeah.
I walked in there with my father and watched that lady explain very, very categorically, okay, this many seats are there. We have students studying this. You will be here from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. You will do this every Wednesday. We have this.
Right.
And two things. One, I realized that that's not for me.
Okay.
I've always been someone who's tried to do his very best at everything. And if I want to be the best at JE, I should have started my preparation 2 years ago.
Right.
Because not only is the environment just that competitive,
Right.
I enjoy science.
Right.
But if I'm going to have to do science to an extent where I'm going to have to cross every I, dot every T, forget about a conceptual understanding and prepare for an exam, that's not it.
Right.
Another aspect which I like to think of more personally is that science scared me so much that it forced me to choose law.
Right. Yeah. Many
Because
of us.
I can I
Right.
sorry?
Right. 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 Yeah. Go on. Go on. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
can either do that and try maybe get in, or I can do law. And every time I felt low on motivation during my CLAT preparation time, like, okay, I don't want to do today's daily GK. I don't want to
Right.
sit and do some questions. I'd be
Right.
like, at least you're not doing IIT.
Right.
That was the genuine mindset throughout the entire thing. And the IP mat fiasco over there. So I joined another coaching center called BPROM.
Okay.
It was supposed to be an online institute of sorts.
Right.
And they advertised as CLAT.
Okay.
Turns out they had clubbed me in with the IP mat batch.
Okay.
So I ended up doing 4 months of speed math.
Oh, okay.
So I
Right.
spent a good 4 months on just doing math over there.
Right.
And then they advertised this intensive coaching camp in Hyderabad, for which I had gone over there. They
Right.
had 2 classes of logical reasoning and continued to do math.
All right. Right.
So then when I finally got back to Bangalore, I spoke to my parents and like, this isn't it.
Right.
I'm doing ISC math anyway. I know the math. I
Right.
don't need this much math.
Right.
So that
Right.
led to me having to switch to another institute. I ended up picking Career Launcher because it was the closest to my house.
Right.
At least there was more of a balance. I was doing English and legal also. And
Right.
it wasn't just math 24/7.
Right. Right. No, this very much reminds me of my own journey. And this was how did you end up choosing Vipro, if that's the right name? Yeah.
I went online, as
Right.
most of my people did,
Right.
and I was reading through a bunch of websites. And one thing BProf had advertised a lot was personal attention.
Right.
So, to be honest, I've noticed that I
Right.
do best whenever a teacher shows a little bit of interest in me.
Right.
Like if the teacher is willing to say that, okay, I can see that he's going to put in the hard work,
Right.
I would do better in those classes. I had great English teachers, which gave me a great background in English.
Right.
So BProf had advertised that. And
Right.
for the initial classes, it was like that, slightly, just enough to get you in there kind of
Right.
situation.
Right.
But
Right.
I'm not saying it was a bad institution or anything. It just
Right.
was not meant for CLAT.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This almost like maybe not false advertising, but maybe not kosher advertising anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I really struggled with that.
Right.
And then when I had to come back, I had to start my thing all over again.
Right.
And then that's when I found out that there are people who've taken this for 2 years. There are people who wrote CLAT twice, thrice, and all. So the full weightage of the exam only hit me in like about July, August.
Got it. When you joined Career Launcher, right?
No, I joined Career Launcher in April, but even then, my batchmates didn't seem to be too hyped up about this thing. And I went through some of their worksheets and stuff.
Sure.
It seemed pretty basic stuff. So I'm like,
Sure.
okay, this should be easy.
Right.
Then I realized it's not just about the paper, you're also competing with people.
Yes.
And that competitive aspect only got in once I started doing mocks more regularly.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Excellent. So I was just saying that this reminds me of my own journey where I joined FITG in 10th and in Hyderabad, no less. So it was the heartland of IIT JEE preparation in many ways. And I have a genuine love of science, but I quickly realized that there are other guys out there who love it more than I do. And मुझे अंग्रेजी आती है. So I'll do CLAT. Yeah. So I know English, so I'll do CLAT. And I was pretty clear from 10th onwards, 11th onwards. So and it just reminds me of that of that decision making. It's often for a lot of people, it can often be a process. I mean, I would say a vast majority, in fact. Let's see if I'm right or wrong in that. Get it in the comment section. Is that people choose CLAT because they don't want to do maths anymore. Yeah, so that's like a clear demarcation, that a decision that they make in their life in 10th. I'm done with maths. Now what can I do? There doesn't seem to be a lot of maths here. I will do law. And that makes sense. And that's how I made my decision. I know that's how a lot of my batchmates, juniors, seniors, a lot of my students, that's how we've arrived at that decision. So Ayesha, do you want to talk a little bit about how you came to that journey and what was that process like for you?
Right. Like everything you discussed, I think mine was quite the opposite actually, because I've decided on law since forever. So I decided law when I was 8 years old actually. So I was in grade 3. And it was because of my elder brother. So he went to NLU Jodhpur. I think it was the same batch as you because he also gave it in 2013. And he's a Supreme Court lawyer right now. So I think I was exposed to it obviously very early on. So I've been listening to cases like bedtime stories since I was like while I was growing up. So it was something which always interested me, and it was something I was very clear about. So I don't think I ever changed my mind till I reached 11th and stuff. Then I decided to take humanities just because again, it makes sense to like take other subjects if you want to have other options open. But for me, it was very clear what I wanted to do was CLAT. So again, I started preparation. Technically, I started preparation in 11th. So I was CBSE humanities, so I'm quite on the other end of the spectrum. But I didn't have math after 10th grade at all. But I never disliked math, even when I had it. I'm sure I would have disliked 11th and 12th math when it actually got hard, but I enjoyed it while it was easy. And that worked out for me because CLAT had just 10th grade math. So I didn't struggle much with CLAT math actually, and that was one of the sections I enjoyed. But because of that, I think it was, again, it was a pretty smooth journey for me. I always knew. And yeah, I pulled up after school kind of stopped as much of its burden, honestly.
Got it. We did touch upon this yesterday. So how did you balance? You did speak about how you found it hard to balance 11th and CLAT prep. But what changed, or what was the difficulty, and then what changed? Because 12th isn't easy either.
So again, I'm in CBSE humanities, so it shouldn't have been much of a problem. But again, I needed that academic validation from school. So there's certainly some amount, because I was told by my seniors and stuff that at some point you're going to have to give up school because you can't be studying for every single class test, because there's still a lot of portions to remember in like pol science, entrepreneurship and stuff. But that was not something I was willing to give up for a lot of time. So I was spending a lot of my time still studying for school. But I think the last thing I did was half yearlies, like my essay ones in, I guess, September is when I gave it my best, because they would be looking at my essay one scores to exempt me from pre-board one. So for a while there, for that month, I don't think I touched CLAT at all except for like daily newspaper and stuff. So that time I completely grinded school. I got like high marks then so that they would exempt me from pre-board one. So that was kind of a weight off my back. So at some point, yeah, obviously I wasn't preparing for class tests and stuff only like November. So after September, I think November, I barely attended school. I would bunk like twice a week. So my school was pretty chill with that after a point because I was still giving class tests and stuff. And then December entirely, I didn't go till 18th because they were having school pre-boards anyway. And I didn't attempt those pre-boards. But I think there were other people who gave CLAT after still attempting their pre-boards. Like my study group, both of them gave their pre-boards. But for me, I had a lot of time, so it wasn't much for me. So I think I kind of divided my time. So I did school till the time it was really necessary for me to, and then I switched entirely to CLAT because it was harder for me to juggle both of them and do both of them well.
Right. So, no, I think that absolutely makes a lot of sense, and this is the right way to. At least I believe this is the right way to think about it, which is that I think more students need to understand that it takes sacrifice. And there are a lot of good students who, who score well and who enjoy their academic life, who write the CLAT and want to do well in the CLAT. This reminds me of, I had a similar experience where 11th, I was firing on all cylinders and I was always a good student and things like that. So I wanted to, in terms of marks at least. And so I wanted to, but when I came into 12th, there were more responsibilities put on me. And I quickly realized that from the school, and I quickly realized that I couldn't stay part of the band. I couldn't be part of the leadership team anymore. So I had to let that stuff go for a year in order to achieve my CLAT dreams. I'm not saying put all your eggs in one basket. That's the wrong thing to do. From a CLAT, from a law entrance cracking perspective, you've got to write the CLAT, you've got to write the LSAT, you've got to write the ALET, you've got to write the SET or the SIMBI entrance test, whatever they call it now. But my larger point is that so do not put all your eggs in the CLAT basket. You don't know what's going to happen, especially with the new patterns that they keep trying out. But you've got to be clear and you've got to be clear very quickly. And the quicker it is, the better it is about doing law and about that the CLAT is an exam and you've got to put in the time. If you don't put in the time, if you don't have the focus, it's the kind of success that gets you into NLS is not going to happen. And that needs to be clear. Yes, Sana, I'd love to hear your story because you have you spent a lot of time in preparation as well, and especially you did online. So what was
Right.
that like? Yeah.
Right. So I signed up with Career Launcher in May of 2021. And I think I used to have these bouts where I'd prep for CLAT. Like 1 week, I remember in July, right after CLAT 2021, when I took all of the workbooks, the module workbooks that we had, and I tried to get through as much of it as possible. But then that fell off really quickly because it's very hard to maintain, that sort of grind while you're also in the 11th grade and you're trying to do well in your school exams. So I think there was a point where there were random, points throughout prep where I would just pick up pace, and then I would like recede back into my ways and, ignore CLAT for a month or two. I think I wasn't very serious until maybe May or April or May of this year, 2022. And I think that's when I got regular with taking mocks and doing daily GK and things like that. For me too, doing well in school was very important. I think I've always been someone who tries to juggle both things instead of giving up one completely in favor of the other. So I'm ISC Humanities. I had math initially in the 11th grade, but I decided to drop it because I thought it was definitely getting too hard for me to manage along with CLAT. Which is a decision I'm very, very thankful to my younger self for. I don't think I would have been able to handle ISC math along with CLAT preparation. So I think I too gave up. I think I was doing well on half yearlies and unit tests and all of those things until about October of 2022, after which I decided to switch track to CLAT. In November, I did have to attend school quite a bit because we had our internal exams going on. And, my school has tried to be very, very accommodating, and they have succeeded at that. But, there are some things that the council just demands of you. So, yeah, we had to go to school then. And we had SUPW projects and things like that due. But yeah, my school too exempted me from prelim 1 because I'd done well enough in the half yearlies. And I think my only piece of advice to anyone who is going through this dilemma of juggling both CLAT and boards is to try your best to just pay attention in classes while they're going on in school. Take notes, because the rest of the year you are going to be heavily dependent on those notes. Like, I have my boards right now, and I can't say I've done a lot of preparation in the last 1 or 2 months, but I'm very thankful that up until October or so, I was very consistent with note taking and things like that. So I can just refer back to that material now. And it doesn't really give me, it's not really, it doesn't really cause much of a strain on me to go back to that and revisit it now. But had I just left it all in favor of CLAT prep, and if it hadn't worked out for me, my backup option was pretty much just applying to universities for economics, through the CUET, through other things. So I don't know how that would have worked out for me, because it's suddenly switching course. So I think, right. And another thing was, I was actually very hesitant to, even in October and November, sort of take days off school and go full steam ahead with CLAT prep, because I didn't have that much self-confidence in myself with respect to CLAT. And I thought that I would be messing up my chances of doing well on the boards if I did that. But, after a lot of reassurance from mentors and seniors and things like that, I think I felt more comfortable in my decision of prepping for CLAT, with everything I've got. But even then, I have to say, I think I could have done a better job of juggling the two back in October and November. I think there are times where you feel like you're going to sit down and do this thing for 10 hours, but it's just not possible. So there were days when I thought, okay, I'm going to just do CLAT work today, and I would take a day off school for that, but I would only end up putting in 2 or 3 hours, and I would be very disappointed with myself by the end of it. But there wasn't really much I could do to get that time back.
Right, absolutely. So don't do that, guys. I think that's a very clear thing. Don't firstly, the sprint model of productivity, which works for developers but doesn't work for students as well. That last minute, you can't cram for the CLAT in the last minute if you want a really, really good rank. That just is not, it's not designed that way. It's not going to work. So there needs to be some consistent effort. The last 90 days, and I do want to get to that, especially with Aditya, because he really got into it in September onwards, and it sounds like Sana as well. And Ayesha, it became consistently more important as the day came, especially in November. But the thing is, the last 90 days matter the most. At the last 30 days, you could start preparing a month before and still do it, but you still have to put in a lot of work during that time. It's much better to do consistent effort of a couple of hours a day rather than putting it all on the line in the last few weeks, because it just makes life so much more difficult. It's possible, but it's very difficult. You will have to put in those 10-12 hour days, but you're ready for them at that point. What I used to do, and what I've told students, and I would love to hear from you guys if this would have worked for you, is what I used to do is I used to do Monday to Friday, and what Sana said is absolutely correct. Pay attention in class. That'll just save you so much time later on. So Monday to Friday, you used to focus on schoolwork, Saturday, Sunday on the CLAT, spend 6 hours a day, including CL classes on Saturday, Sunday on the CLAT, but Monday to Friday school, Saturday, Sunday CLAT. Of course, until I was lucky that, and you're a little bit more luckier now that the boards kind of don't matter to you, but ours was after the boards. And, but then we had more time as well, but yeah. So I had, so that I was able to do boards, then ALET, then CLAT. So, and we had time for each of those things back in the day. But yeah, so would that have helped you, or, you don't have to say yes. I'm just genuinely curious. Would Monday to Friday, would something of that system would have helped you?
I think for someone starting out in 11th who is, who wants to be consistent with prep, that is definitely, the ideal model to be following. For me personally, whenever we had school exams and unit tests, class tests, I would just, and I'm not sure I would recommend this, but I would solely focus on that, and I would do nothing for CLAT, like except reading the newspaper, because that was just sort of a habit I wanted to keep on at all times. But the rest of the time, I think in April onwards, I would try to do, it wasn't really a daily goal per se, but I would try to get in a few things in. Like I would try to get, 60 questions, 70 questions in. And another thing I did from August onwards, I stopped taking sectional tests. So every time I would want to attempt, anything CLAT related, it would just have to be a full length mock, because I wanted to get into the habit of sitting and doing that for a full 2 hours. And I wouldn't say I took more than 2-3 mocks a week in any case. Usually it was just one. But yeah, spending that time on analyzing a mock is very important. Spending a lot of time figuring out where you're going wrong in things like critical reasoning is, very important. Daily GK, of course, helps. I would say one thing that you have to keep going throughout is just newspaper reading and general reading. So diversify your reading, because a lot of the passages and all of that it might not be things you're like, there are people who are avid readers who might still be thrown off by the nature of passages in English, because a lot of people might find them boring. But nothing is boring if you sort of create an interest in it, right? You will always feel like exploring the subject once you sort of introduce yourself to it. I think I got into things like anthropology a lot last year, simply because of like career launcher passages that I would come across, and I would be so into it that I would read up on it in my free time.
That's really cool. So I think Sana is kind of underselling herself at this stage, because she keeps saying it was light prep, but you need to understand, for a lot of people out there, and I can't emphasize this enough, I think she's got it right. You got to do that 60-70 questions a day. You got to do those 3 mocks a week if you're being inconsistent in your practice. Yeah, I
would say, but there were days like the 60-70 questions would only happen like 3 times a week. As much as I tried to make it a daily ritual, I don't think it was possible for me. Like it definitely could have been, but I think I was just slacking off on that front, because I would choose to read and go down that spiral of exploring topics instead of actually practicing questions.
Right. No, I perfectly no, but that's the thing. That's a level of consistency that many people fail to achieve 3 times a week.
Right, right.
I mean, you guys, everyone listening to this, everyone watching this, you've got to understand that you've got to do it at least 3 times a week. You've got to do 3, like if you're going to be inconsistent, or if you're not going to do 2 hours a day, then that's fine. But and you won't find the motivation every day. That's anyone telling you that you're failing because you're not doing something on a daily basis is not helping you. What you really need to do, however, is at least spend, when you do put in the time, to put in the time to do the mocks, to do the number of questions that need to get done on a daily, to really practice with whatever time you have, even if it's just, 6 hours a week, and you've got to make the time for 6 hours a week. You've got to really practice doing mocks, practice with questions, and in a very specific way, which is in a goal-oriented way. So does anyone want to talk about how they would go about practicing? And then I want to get to a very popular question, but does anyone want to talk about how they would go about practicing when they were doing their CLAT?
Sure. So
Yeah.
the way I used to practice personally was all our worksheets and stuff, whenever we do them in a class, always mark it in pencil so that I can reuse it later.
Right.
Because I found one very important metric is that when you attempt one set of questions and then another, something must change in between that.
Yes.
Like there's no point in attempting the same thing with the same thinking process and the same mindset. You have to change something. So what I would do was I would do 1 mock a week after my midterms, which was in about September was when I started doing mocks at the center. So I would, once I saw my mock, I'd go back, check the scores, check where I went wrong, spend some time with my instructor, and then in the sectional tests that I used to do throughout the week, try and rectify those mistakes.
Right.
Because there's no point in doing, I don't know, 100, 150 questions a day
Absolutely.
if you're not going to change anything about it.
Absolutely. Yes.
Like I remember we had this one class with one particular instructor who came in and scared the living hell out of all of us.
Right.
He came into that class and then he asked us how many questions we're doing. And then we said, sir, we do like what, 30 questions a class, and we have 3 classes a week. So 90 questions, and we do 1 mock.
Right.
He said, you guys do about 400 questions in a week.
Right.
I used to do that per day to get into NLU Bhopal,
Right.
which absolutely psyched all of us out.
Right.
It threw us all off because
Right.
then he used to say, oh, I used to do 600 to 800 questions a day.
Right.
And then that made no sense because first of all, where are 600 to 800 questions to do?
Correct.
And because we had the new pattern, right? So we couldn't even refer to the previous year's stuff.
Right.
We'd have to take maybe 5 to 10 marks of English from here and stuff like that.
Correct.
So ultimately, I would say that even if you're doing 100 questions a week, just like 10 to 15 questions a day, make sure you're learning something about what you're doing. So the reason why you need to do volume is so that you can spot a pattern.
Yes.
And when you spot that pattern, you make a change. One thing I personally struggled with was assumptions. It took me a while to understand that those are things that are unsaid. Nobody says them, but they're still important.
Yeah.
And then as you keep practicing, you get better at identifying them and you get better at understanding.
Right.
But if you can't identify a pattern to your mistakes, there's no point in doing questions.
Exactly. Exactly. Without a doubt. You're 100% right. That's the purpose of volume. But really what it's about is take 10 questions. Try this is what I recommend, and this is what I use. This is how I prepped. Take 10 questions. Take your weaknesses. Take logic, for example. Take your weaknesses, take 10 questions, take 9 and try to get 9 out of 10 right. Just keep doing it until you get 9 out of 10 right. And the most important thing that you have to do, okay, I don't know where this trend has, like I'm going to rant for maybe at least a minute on this. This mock analysis of 2 hours, I don't understand what that is. I don't understand what that means. I don't understand what you're doing in those 2 hours. I would, and you guys have gone through the new system, so I'd love to know. But we didn't even used to have like structured mock analysis in my day. So I had to do my own mock analysis. And here's all I did. I got maybe 50 questions wrong out of 200 or whatever. I would get like, at the beginning, I would get 70, 100, 120 questions wrong. Only focus on those that you get wrong. see why you got them wrong. Really understand the root cause of why you got them wrong. Was it because the fan was on in the room? Was it because you don't understand how assumptions work? Was it because you didn't have the time? Then make a game plan for why you are never going to make that mistake again. And then fourth step, perhaps the most important, have the conviction, have the clarity, do the practice to know that I'm never going to make that mistake again. Just that level of execution is, I think, that something that my batchmates, my seniors, my juniors, and everyone in this, and that desire to kill it in a sense is something that, and that unacceptance of mediocrity is something that, to put it in a harsh sense, is something that we all share. What do you think about that, Sana? Does that resonate with you? Sorry, Ayesha, I'm very sorry.
Yeah, certainly. I think for me also, I was kind of different in the sense that I kind of obsessively gave mocks, I would say. And it's not something I would recommend, but it's something which I genuinely enjoyed in the sense that I had an obsession with a need of being productive. And I felt that a mock was giving me that. And for me, I never had a problem with sitting the entire way through 2 hours. I barely gave sectionals because towards the end, I think November, December, I was giving a mock every day just because I liked it and it was just 2 hours. Also, I was studying with one other friend of mine. So both of us would give the exact same mock. So if I'd gone to school that day and he'd already given it while I came back, then I'd feel motivated to finish it right after so that we can analyze it. And because of that, again, like Aditya said, the problem was that since we had a new pattern, there wasn't a lot of earlier papers and questions we could refer to, especially for math, because I liked practicing math. And I felt like passage-based questions were very different to solve as compared to just one-liners.
Yeah.
So I remember I used to look for those everywhere. But I think that's why mocks helped me, just because I enjoyed practicing those questions and that was the only place I could get it. And personally, I didn't really mind giving all those mocks. But I do agree with the analysis thing because I watched a lot of videos before my own CLAT where people were like, we used to give a mock for 2 hours and then analyze for another 2 hours, which made no sense to me because it's like 150 questions. What could you possibly be doing for 2 hours? But again, like you said, I only went over the questions I got wrong or the questions which I had a doubt in and I still got right, just due to luck.
Right.
But I used to specifically focus on math. I usually didn't get much stuff wrong. So if I did, it was probably usually if I didn't know a formula or something. GK I used to go through entirely because I did not know a lot of GK. So I used to end up messing up or not getting a lot of them. So for me, GK analysis was important because I would make notes of all the information that I learned. And for the rest of them, again, it was all about developing a pattern. So I'd go with the ones I got wrong. So again, the concepts like assumptions, then, well, I've forgotten all of them now, but there were a lot of logical concepts
Inferences,
that
yeah.
we did for that. Inferences, right? Yeah, inferences
Yeah.
was definitely a problematic one.
Yeah.
Even in ALET, I think I prepared some of the logic type on the side
Yeah.
as well, just in case to be prepared
Right.
for anything.
Right.
But I think, again, yeah, for me, it remained giving mocks and analyzing them, but I didn't waste too much time in analyzing. And my main focus was on analyzing GK and sometimes math.
Got it. So I think that's a great stepping off point into the number one question which CLAT students have when they begin their preparation. We've talked about how you get into your preparation and how to balance your preparation, but I think that's a great stepping off. That's a great segue into the number one question that students have when they start their CLAT prep, which you'll see in part 3 of this episode, just because, yeah, we're running out of time on this recording. Yeah. Thanks.